The ancient Egyptians believed that the world operated under a cosmic order called Ma'at, truth, harmony, and justice. Maintaining Ma'at was so important, it was considered a divine duty. The pharaoh, believed to be the living god Horus, was the enforcer of this law, but he rarely judged cases personally. Justice was administered through local courts with scribes, priests, and sometimes nobles acting as judges. Cases were recorded on ostraca, shards of limestone or pottery, and punishments? They were harsh, because disorder was not just a crime against society, it was a crime against the gods. Many crimes in ancient Egypt were similar to today: theft, murder, adultery, corruption, tomb robbing, but the punishments were far more severe, especially if the crime disturbed the peace of Ma'at. If a man stole grain during a famine, he wasn't just a thief, he was a threat to the entire nation's spiritual balance. So how were they punished? In many cases, torture wasn't just for punishment, it was used to extract confessions. Egyptians valued truth, but they also wanted results. The stick, a long wooden staff, was the most common tool. Suspected criminals were beaten on the soles of their feet. This method, known as bastinado, caused intense pain without immediately killing the person. It often left victims unable to walk. This torture was used on slaves, peasants, and sometimes even scribes to make them confess crimes, real or imagined. Records from the Deir el-Medina village show that workers who complained or protested were whipped. Even accusations of laziness could end in beatings. For more serious offenses, mutilation was common. Cutting off noses, ears, or tongues was punishment for lying, false witness, or blasphemy. Inscriptions show men with missing noses as symbols of shame. Why the nose? Because it was visible, a public marker of dishonor. It ruined a man's ability to appear honorable or divine. In some temple inscriptions, enemies of the state are depicted without genitalia, castrated to remove their masculinity and legacy. The message was clear: you betray the pharaoh and your body will be defiled forever. Tomb robbery was one of the worst crimes in Egypt. Why? Because Egyptians believed in the afterlife. Disturbing a tomb meant destroying someone's eternity. It was a crime against the soul. Many robbers were caught and punished with impalement, a wooden stake driven through the body, leaving the victim to die slowly. Papyrus records from the 20th dynasty show trials where tomb robbers were burned alive or executed. Their families were often punished too, enslaved or banished, guilty by association. Even laborers and artisans faced extreme punishment. In Deir el-Medina, the workers who built the Valley of the Kings were sometimes punished for slowing down or hoarding food. Whipping was common. On one occasion, a foreman was caught stealing and was beaten, branded, and chained. Slaves, in particular, suffered the worst. Whipped daily for disobedience, chained for life, sometimes blinded to prevent escape. And if a slave killed their master, they were burned alive as a warning. Before we continue, if you're new here, please subscribe to my channel, and to those who are already subscribed, thank you so much. Let's continue. But what about nobles or priests? The rich were not immune, though their punishments were sometimes more symbolic. One priest accused of treason was forced to commit suicide, a cleaner end than public torture. In rare cases, high-ranking criminals were executed publicly to send a message. A famous papyrus describes the harem conspiracy against Pharaoh Ramses III. His own wives and sons plotted to kill him. When the plot was discovered, dozens were arrested. Some were executed by being thrown into pits of burning coals. Others were forced to kill themselves, their names erased from monuments, an act worse than death. Execution in ancient Egypt was rare, but brutal. The most common methods included beheading, swift but symbolic; hanging, often done in public squares; drowning, sometimes used for women; burning, used in extreme religious crimes or political betrayal; impaling, reserved for enemies of the state or tomb robbers. Each method carried religious weight. Burning destroyed the body, preventing the soul from reaching the afterlife. Erasure of the name from monuments and records, damnatio memoriae, was considered worse than death. Women were punished too, but the punishments varied based on class. A noblewoman caught in adultery might be exiled or divorced without dowry. A common woman could be beaten or mutilated. Children were generally not tortured, but were often punished alongside their families in collective justice. In some records, entire households were enslaved because of the crimes of one man. Blasphemy and heresy were punished as crimes against the gods. Stealing from a temple could result in mutilation of hands, castration, beheading. If a priest was accused of false prophecy or misuse of ritual, he could be banished from the temple forever, tied to an altar and beaten, or even buried alive as an offering to the gods. The gods were not forgiving, and neither were their earthly representatives. But perhaps the most feared punishment was not of this world. In death, the soul would face judgment in the hall of Ma'at. The heart would be weighed against the feather of truth. If the heart was heavy with sin, the monster Ammit would devour it. That was the true death. No afterlife, no memory, just oblivion. Ancient Egypt gave us beauty, medicine, art, and architecture, but behind the sandstone walls, justice was unforgiving. Order was sacred, and punishment was public, painful, and permanent. So the next time you see a golden sarcophagus, remember what it cost to build a kingdom that lasted 3,000 years. The gods demanded balance, and Egypt delivered it with blood. What do we learn from a civilization that punished so harshly, yet lasted so long? Was it fear that kept Egypt united, or was it belief in balance? Thanks for watching.